The typist's room at the Serrano firm sat behind a frosted glass partition, separated from the main corridor by 12 feet and a world's worth of distance. 3 women worked there in the mornings. One who handled invoices, one who handled personal correspondence, and Rosa Fenn, who handled whatever was left. She had been in that room for 2 years and 4 months. In all that time, Vito Serrano had walked past the partition perhaps 30 times, without once looking through the glass. Piero had counted. He counted many things, from his corner desk in the outer office. After 22 years of practice, he had counted the number of times the elevator doors opened before 9 in the morning. Usually twice, occasionally 3. And the number of associates who straightened their collars before entering Vito's office, which was every single one of them. He had counted the seconds of silence that followed Vito's voice when it carried through the heavy door, always more than the speaker expected. Piero had believed, for most of those 22 years, that he had seen everything there was to see inside those walls. He had not seen what Rosa Fenn had been quietly doing for the better part of 6 months. It began, as Piero later understood it, with a figure that didn't balance. Rosa kept carbon copies of every document she typed. Not the originals, which went through Emilio's hands before they reached Vito's desk, but the carbons, which were technically the firm's property and practically no one's concern. She filed them in a plain gray folder she kept in her bottom drawer, in date order, because she believed in accuracy the way some people believed in weather. Quietly, completely, without expecting it to make her popular. When a transfer order she had typed in November reappeared in December, with a different sum and a different destination, she pulled the carbon, set the 2 documents side by side, and understood that the discrepancy was not a clerical error. She did not go to Emilio. Emilio was the one who had brought her the December version to type. She did not go to Piero, though she trusted him well enough. She did not know who else might be involved, and she was precise about the things she did not know. What she did was continue. She kept the carbons, noted the dates, watched the pattern take its shape across 6 weeks with the patience of a woman who had learned early that the only power available her was the power of being right. She said nothing to the invoice typist and nothing to the personal correspondence typist. She came in before 8, left after 5, and typed what she was given with her usual accuracy. If Emilio noticed anything in her manner, he gave no sign. People did not notice Rosa Fenn's manner. That too had been something she'd learned early. On the 2nd Thursday of February, the gray folder under her arm, walked to the end of the corridor, and knocked on Vito Serrano's door. Piero saw her go. He watched her knock. One knock, firm and unhurried, and heard the pause before the voice inside said to come in. He watched the door close behind her. He looked at the clock on the wall. He had not moved from his chair, but something in the room had shifted, the way pressure shifts before a storm. Inside the office, as Piero would piece together afterward from what Rosa told him and what the aftermath confirmed, she had placed the folder on the desk without preamble. She had explained what it was, what she had noticed, and how she had been keeping the record. She had not accused Emilio by name in the first sentence, but the dates and the figures did the work for her. She had stood straight and kept her voice level. When Vito asked her why she had waited 6 weeks rather than coming immediately, she said she had wanted to be certain before she brought him something that could not be untrue once he had seen it. He had looked at her for a long moment after that. He had not said anything. He looked at the folder. Emilio was summoned 20 minutes later. He was not in the building by the following morning. What consequences found him beyond those walls were handled beyond those walls, by people whose job it was to handle such things, and none of it was visible from the outer office. Piero saw was the door to Vito's office stay closed for most of the afternoon, and then open. Vito himself walked the length of the corridor to the frosted glass partition and pushed the door of the typist's room open. So was the only one there. The other 2 women had left at 5. It was 12 minutes past. Piero could not hear what was said. He was not trying to, precisely, though he had not closed his own drawer or begun to gather his coat. He watched through the outer glass the shape of the conversation. Vito standing, not looming. There was a difference, and Vito knew it. Rosa with her hands resting on the edge of her desk, not gripping it, listening. After a few minutes she nodded. After a few minutes more she said something, and whatever it was, Vito was still for a beat before he answered. Then he reached into his breast pocket and set a card on her desk, the firm's card, and said something else, and left the typist's room, and walked back down the corridor toward his office. He paused at Piero's desk on the way. He had never paused at Piero's desk. In 22 years, Vito Serrano had spoken to Piero perhaps 40 times, and in 38 of those instances it had been to ask for a file. He said, "She's been doing the work of 3 people for the wage of 1. That changes on Monday. Name goes on the correspondence room door by the end of the week." He paused. "You'll see to it." Piero said that he would. Vito went back into his office and closed the door, and Piero sat for a moment with his hands flat on his desk. He was not a sentimental man. He had worked for powerful men, long enough to know that the machinery of influence ground on regardless of sentiment, and that most of what looked like loyalty was calculation with better manners. He had stopped expecting to be surprised. He looked at the frosted glass. Rosa was still in the typist's room, her desk lamp on, putting on her coat, with the same unhurried motion with which she did everything. She reached for the gray folder, which Vito had apparently returned to her, or perhaps she had brought a second copy. Piero did not know, and set it in her bag. He thought about what it had cost her to keep that record for 6 weeks. Not in effort. He understood the effort, but in the particular nerve it took to walk to a door that no one in the outer office walked to uninvited, to knock once, and to place something irrevocable on the desk of the most powerful man in the building without asking for anything in return. Not a reward, not protection, not even credit. She had brought it because a figure had not balanced, and she could not leave an unbalanced figure alone. That was the whole of it. Piero had seen a great many things in 22 years. He had seen calculation dressed as loyalty, flattery dressed as competence, and ambition dressed as devotion. He was not sure he had seen the plain, unglamorous, quietly stubborn thing Rosa Fenn had done, the thing that had no name more complicated than honesty, done so cleanly, so little personal return by someone the room had spent 2 years and 4 months failing to look at. He gathered his coat. He turned off his lamp. As he passed the Typist's room, Rosa was locking her drawer. She glanced up. "Good night, Piero," she said. "Good night," he said. And then, because 22 years had given him at least that much, "It was a good thing you did." She looked at him steadily, the way she looked at most things without performance. "It was the accurate thing," she said. "That's all." She said it without pride and without modesty. She said it the way she said everything, as though it were simply true. Truth required no decoration. Piero walked to the elevator and pressed the button and stood waiting, and in the quiet of the corridor behind him, he heard her lock the typist's room door. Try the handle once to be sure, and go. On Monday her name was on the door. He knew without asking that she would still arrive before 8.